Welcome to the Living in Chicago podcast, where I get to interview real Chicagoans about the neighborhoods that they live, work, and play in. My name is Jake Lyons. I'll be your host. And in this episode, I interview Kristen Peterson about her experience so far living in the near West Side neighborhood of Chicago, which is what we're calling it because this is the section of the near West Side that is closest to the United Center. It doesn't really have as far as I know, it doesn't have sort of like its own neighborhood name yet, like a lot of other areas within the Near West Side do, such as the West Loop and Fulton Market, the Medical District, Tri-Taylor, Little Italy, even Greek Town, places like that. So, for just lack of a better name, we call it the United Center neighborhood, or we actually call it the Near West Side neighborhood, excuse me. If all this sounds familiar, we also spoke with Holly Smith about this neighborhood back in episode 5. Same general area, but a different person and different experiences and whatnot. So, and honestly, I'm gonna be having lots of episodes dealing with various neighborhoods within the Near West Side because it is a very popular section of town in general, and there's a lot going on, and a lot of people want to live there for a lot of different reasons. And we that's something that I intend on exploring a lot for the remainder of however long this show is going on. So, if you are unfamiliar with where it is, though, if you just picture the Chicago Loop or downtown Chicago, just when you picture the skyline of Chicago, that's the Chicago Loop essentially. If you just go a little bit west of that, that is basically the West Loop, which logic would follow, and the West Loop is within the near West Side. So basically, the area that we're talking about is a couple miles west of downtown Chicago and is between right around 290, Highway 290. If you are listening to a radio station in Chicago, you might hear that referred to as the Eisenhower Expressway. It's also right between a couple different train lines. So blue line to the south, pink and green to the north. Lots of different bus lines going, north and south as well. So plenty of ways to get around if you are looking for public transit or car. Very conveniently located neighborhood. Lots going on there. Not necessarily in the exact immediate area, but lots to do within, walking distance or a short car ride or, things like that. But we're kind of stepping on the toes of what we're going to get into in this conversation. So without further ado, I will let Kristen Peterson tell you more about what it's like to live in the near West Side. All right. Joined here today by Kristen Peterson. She is a veteran of the event sales space, event venue, event planning, anything involving having a good time and finding a place to do that. Kristen, how
For
are you?
sure. I'm good. How are you?
I am doing very well. A slight, as we've talked about beforehand, I battling a slight cold just from various goings on over the holiday and things like that. So to anyone who will ever be listening to this, apologies if there's a couple of sniffles or raspiness along the way, but no excuses, play like a champion. We're here to talk about Chicago and the near West Side and just Chicago in general with Kristen. Kristen, what in a nutshell, what would you want the audience to know about you and your experience in Chicago so far?
I guess that I was born and raised in the northwest suburbs, but always felt the need. I'm more of like a city person, definitely, than a suburban person, and that there's two different types of people. I always say that are either city people or suburban people, and a lot of people like to tell me
Yeah.
that my opinion will change when I get older, and I think that is not true.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's definitely the route you see a lot of people take, right? Is like grow up in the suburbs, get the itch to be a city person for a little while, settle down, have kids, move back to the suburbs, and the cycle repeats. But it always warms my soul a little bit when I see somebody go against that grain, and they're just like, no,
Yeah,
city, so this is fine. This is a fine place to raise kids. You don't need all the suburb trappings and all that.
agreed.
What so Schaumburg originally, right?
Mhm.
What maybe what I don't really know how to phrase this question. I'm just gonna go for it. So what do you think is like the relationship between the suburbs and the city from the perspective of like both sides? Like growing up in the suburbs, were the people in your life, were they kind of like anti-city, even though it is just kind of right there, or
Yeah.
hostile? Yeah, what do you say about that?
Well, I would say like my parents both were like raised in the city. They both moved out in like middle school and junior high. Not I mean that's the same thing. Middle school and high school. So they're like both the babies of their family. So their older siblings, did born, raised, went to high school and kind of those pathways. So I think that they have their own view because they did that pattern of like their family moved to the suburbs and they did that. And my dad has still to this day does go down here and work, so he's exposed to it, but it's always the traffic. It's like every time you talk to someone in the burbs, they're like, how do you deal with the traffic? It's so horrible. What about the violent crimes? Are you afraid? Do you feel safe? And I feel like that's kind of just always been the message is like it's a headache until still to this day. But I get
Yeah,
that.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And you live, I mean, you don't have to give like an exact address by any means, but you're near West Side.
Yeah, it's the people probably don't know this neighborhood. I literally didn't until I like looked at a map. It's probably gonna get a better name in the next, I'd say 5 to 10 years, just with like gentrification. It's like right by the United Center. So
Mhm.
I usually say that compared to like near West Side because no one knows that neighborhood, but they know the surrounding area of the United Center.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a couple conversations on the show already about how odd it is to try to name that specific neighborhood right there, because every it seems like every other corner on Chicago kind of gets to have like its own identity and its
Mhm.
own name. Even like the Fulton Market District is only like
Right.
really a couple blocks, really, but it's
Literally.
it's like a whole world unto itself. But yeah, so you're kind of over in that like no man's land between like the West Loop and like East Garfield Park between.
Yeah, and like and cornered in between West Town, like East Garfield Park, West
Yeah.
Town, and yeah, just kind of like that interesting
Hmm.
area.
How and you've been there for how long?
Uh, like this is coming up on my third year.
Okay. So long enough to that's a pretty solid sample size. What do you? I mean, it's all been I guess since you would have moved. I say you would have been moved in pretty much like COVID year,
I would say like the
essentially.
ending, it like I mean, well, it depends on when you COVID when it
Yeah.
was. Um, Yeah, I guess I feel like things are just even in my short time here, there was like a vacant lot that's been vacant for a really long time, and they just built a three flat, it feels like in 2 months. I mean,
Mhm.
it feels like that, but I mean, maybe, but definitely a very short period of time. The building's there. It seems like they have to just do like the interior things, but just to see that change and, you know, right there.
Yeah. What's been your experience just in general living there? I mean, hey, from just like a safety standpoint, things to do within walking distance or not too far, all that.
Yeah, I would say safety, I feel very safe. I know like 10 years ago, this area was very different. That's what I hear a lot. Obviously I wasn't
Hmm.
here 10 years ago, but I can see that. But right now I feel like I live around a lot of like families and just things like that. As far as like walkability, I would say you have to be like committed to the walk. And by that, I mean like 15, 20 minutes, which is not a bad walk at all. But like, it's not like, oh, I can walk 5 minutes and to get, I mean, I can to get coffee actually, and maybe it's like 7, but just compared to like some other neighborhoods, I would say it's walkable, but it's not as walkable as others.
Gotcha. Is this the only neighborhood that in Chicago that you've actually lived in so
Yeah.
far?
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause that's how you spent some time in some other places, Minnesota, Twin Cities,
Yeah.
etc.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to live in like downtown St. Paul. So like in comparison of like when I lived in downtown St. Paul, like unless I was going somewhere, like the grocery store, which is not in St. like downtown area, I would really be able to like walk to like my nail salon or like just those types of like quick access things, like my favorite local bar. Not to say that I can't walk to like the bars around me, but they're just not my favorite locals, I guess.
Mm, mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
feel like it's because it is so close to the United like center that it really the business there also depends on like if there's something going on at the United Center, then that obviously impacts it.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, there's really for being right for having the United Center right there, there's really not a ton of like businesses that you would think would kind of be around a venue like that. I mean, you got the oh man, what's the name of the burger place right there
Really
on
go.
Ogden? Yeah, Billy Goat. Sorry,
Hmm.
Billy Goat. I go to Billy Goat all the time. I'm so bad with names sometimes, but yeah, like Billy Goat there, and then like a couple others. But for the most part, you kind of have to go down back into the like towards the West Loop to really get into
Yeah,
anything.
pretty much. It is that. I mean, and I think a lot of it has to do with kind of the changing of the neighborhood, throughout the years that like 10 years ago, people didn't really want to spend time right around the United Center. It was more of like a go to the event and like leave right away type deal. And
Right.
now people are like, oh, well, thinking about it. So I'm thinking things will change, but also the United Center is like surrounded by surface lots. I mean, there's just
Hmm.
so much surface parking. Um, I guess I don't really, think of the other like Sox Park, I guess probably, but that's in a different area. Like Wrigley, it's Wrigley. So
Hmm. So, what neighborhoods do you tend to spend the most time in, like on either for work or leisure time?
yeah, for work, it's usually, just like probably like River North, Streeterville, Gold Coast, West Loop, in those types of areas. But as far as like leisure, I do like that West Loop is so close to, so kind of staying in that area, a little bit of Wicker Park, which is just an interesting neighborhood in itself, but
Hmm.
it's super close by. So just kind of like staying within. That's why I really like where I'm at because I feel like I'm 15 minutes away from everything. I'm super close to Pilsen. I'm super close to the Loop. I'm not
Hmm.
that far away from like even like the Gold Coast or going up more north. Like it's kind of nice to be that located.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, so you said for work, and I mean, I know, we don't have to get into like exact employers or anything like that, but I mean, what's like, what about the work you do has you in those like the Streeterville, River North kind of areas? Is this just where the places are that happen to have the kind of events that you're working in, or?
Yeah, I would say definitely that kind of typically traditionally I would say I do more like corporate events and whether their offices are I mean it's funny when you talk to people they'll say downtown and I always ask them what's your definition of downtown. Is that the Loop, is that people will say River North, people will say Streeterville, like what is downtown Chicago is a true question that I like to ask people because it varies. So I would say, I guess, in that people like to stay within that like quote unquote downtown realm for things, whether they're doing, you know, like coming in town for business and that's where their hotels are, or just things of that nature where their corporate office is kind of there. um it kind of generally brings more business naturally.
So yeah, I mean, I know you said like you haven't been there long enough to really observe some of the changes that have happened over the years, but even just in terms of like what you hear, I don't know, when we met before, we were talking about just how different a lot of the neighborhoods are based on what we've heard, like the
Yeah.
stories of like all these neighborhoods that we know of as just nothing but nice places where people want to live. Is like, yeah, you hear that all the time, like 10, 15 years ago. Oh, you didn't want to step foot in there past dark or really any time or anything like that. And it's like kind of wild to hear. I mean, what?
Yeah, definitely. I was about to say that, like, I guess because growing up, I would go to the quote unquote like Fulton Market area, back when it
Mhm,
was a market. And my dad used to own like Pete's Meats, which is a meat packing company. My uncle still owns the building across from Peoria, on Lake Street, where like the Stan's Donuts, like they manufacture donuts there now.
mhm,
So, I would go down there at 4 in the morning with him and just go to work, and it would just be just completely different. And for, I guess it really comes to life when I bring my dad down here and I'm driving around with him or any of his brothers, and they drive by and like, oh, I used to own that building, and like, or right there where it's now a skyscraper, or like a high rise, not a skyscraper but like a
mhm,
high rise. um like it used to be like a building that was demolished, and just kind of like those things. And I guess they're just kind of like stuck in their ways, where I want to maybe like take them out to like a nice restaurant or something in that area. And they're just like, I can't believe that this is like what's here now. And they're charging this, and just, things like that. I
yeah.
feel really it changes, which is gentrification and it's growth. And it's just, I think it's interesting, like the neighborhoods that they pick. But I mean, if you really think about it, the West Loop and Fulton Market is so close to River North and
Mhm,
Streeterville, and or like quote unquote downtown, the Loop. So it just kind of makes sense in the way of expanding, that
mhm.
would be, brought in where people do want to live because it is convenient.
Time for the Real Estate Stats Corner presented by me, Jake Lyons, real estate advisor here in Chicago with At Properties and my website, thechicagohomesource.com. In this, we are, of course, going to talk about the near west side, since that's the neighborhood that we are discussing in this episode. And for these, I'm just going to throw basically three numbers out at you just so you can get a general sense of what real estate is going for in the near west side neighborhood, because what really is a neighborhood without real estate, right? So I think this is important. Of course I do, because I'm a real estate agent, so I might be a little bit biased, but first number I'm throwing out there is the median sales price for a 2-bed condo in the near west side. So right now the most recent data I have is December of 2023, which is important to know because these numbers obviously change all the time. But as of right now, the median sales price for a condo in the near west side is $400,000. 50% sold for more, 50% sold for less. That is the median sales price for a 2-bed condo in the near west side, $400,000. If you're looking for more of a house, keeping in mind that actual single family houses with 3 or 4 or more bedrooms, not super common at all in the near west side. Near west side is a little closer to downtown, so it's more dense, more condo heavy, more apartment heavy, but there are some houses in some areas of it. So it does, there are a few out there. The median sales price for those right now is $714,250. $714,250 median sales price for a house in the near west side neighborhood. And If you just want to, not just, but if you're looking to rent a 2-bed apartment, the median price on that per month right now is basically $3,100, $3,095. But do keep in mind before you get too much sticker shock on that, and really with all of these except maybe the house, is that these numbers, most of these numbers are coming from places that transacted closer to downtown in the West Loop and Fulton Market area, not necessarily where we are talking about in this episode. The Fulton Market, West Loop, those places tend to be much more expensive. So if you just go a mile or two west, where we are talking about more in this episode, you can expect to probably pay half to 2/3 of that. So anyway, that has been the real estate stats corner. For more listings or to see what's going on in these neighborhoods or the whole city, really, go to thechicagohomesource.com, which you can find in the show notes. Yeah, it's fairly, I think it's pretty intuitive to look at sort of the growth patterns that the city has had in the last decade or two and just be like, yeah, I could see why that would happen there. Like even looking up to like Westtown, Wicker Park, Logan Square, kind of heading up that way. It's like, okay, it's along the blue line. I can figure this out, or
Mm.
Milwaukee Avenue, or like the green/pink line in the case of West Loop and things like that. It's like, yeah, the lines still matter, and proximity to the dense, downtown still matters. At least, it did. I think it still does, but it's obviously things are a little different, like post COVID, all that stuff. But people are going back
Yeah.
to the offices though.
Yeah, I mean, well, speaking of offices, like Google has their office down there. A lot of corporate companies
Hmm.
have kind of chosen to put like corporate McDonald's have moved to that area. So
Yeah.
that also helps with it too. And I also think it's interesting that like, Randolph Restaurant Row years ago, it used to be where the food was coming from, the meat, the poultry, like the products, those
Hmm.
things were coming from there. And now it's restaurants there. So it's kind
Hmm.
of sticking with that realm almost and just expanding.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never actually made that connection, but that does make sense that that would be one of the, like get your meat from a block away, get all your products from just it's all right there. So that would
Hmm.
make sense that like the biggest restaurant area in the city would also grow out of that. I wonder if that's how that actually happened. I mean, I imagine it is to some extent, but yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, that's something to think about. I just don't just thinking back, I know it's obviously really boomed within the past couple of years where everybody, it feels like if you're any type of restaurant group, you are opening at least one restaurant in the West Loop, to
Hmm.
just kind of keep up with the Joneses almost. Um, but I would like be interested to kind of go back and see the first evolutions of who did that. But I also think that the West Loop is kind of creating its own vibe in the sense that people River North used to be, like the go-to spot where everyone would want to go, but it's kind of now seen as a little rough. I've heard a lot of people say that they don't feel safe going out in River North because of the things that are going on there. And that's why they're kind of going to West Loop. And I don't want to jinx it or anything, but I
Hmm.
think from a standpoint of like easy in and out and like getaways and things of that nature for violence, it's easier to, disappear in River North than it is more so in West Loop or Fulton Market, just because of like all of those one way. It's not really made set up the same way as River North, which is made for like high dense populations of traffic. And that area was made for not that at all.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
mean, it's not made for all these people to be parking there because there's no parking at all.
Right. And even
I
public transit is kind of hard in the West Loop unless you're right on the green line. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of people live like, they're like, oh, I live by the red line, so I take it everywhere. And I'm like, I live like off the pink and green, so I almost always have to transfer. It's like there's not, unless I'm going to like the West Loop, there's not really a direct place. So then other people will have to kind of do that same thing and transfer to get onto the train. So,
Yeah, right.
mhm.
Just yeah, in general, the more hurdles there are, the for anybody who means you harm, the more safe you're going to be. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
definitely.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like also a different area where people needed to go because I would say, like Gold Coast, Old Town, that tends to be the younger, like early 20s, type vibe. And West Loop is more of, like the young professional, not that the young kids are young professionals, but like not out of college, more established people. It's
Hmm.
that kind of vibe.
Yeah. What would you say about if you were to categorize similarly West Town going up that way, like West Town, Wicker Park area?
Well, I feel like Wicker Park is very, it's like a melting pot. It gives,
Hmm.
because there's like the Wicker Park vibe of like the hipster, just alternative type person. But then like yesterday I went to this place in Wicker Park off of Milwaukee, and I was like really not expecting that to like be in Wicker Park. Like it played like hip hop music, had great food, just not necessarily like, I really enjoyed it. I just wasn't expecting it to be in that neighborhood. So I guess it's kind of like a melting pot of different things.
So if someone were to visit your neighborhood, and we can just kind of say, maybe not your like immediate neighborhood, but
Yep.
like kind of these general areas that
Mhm.
we've been talking about, for just one day, what would be sort of the perfect way to experience these Chicago neighborhoods in a way that you would recommend?
Um, I would hope it would be when it's nice outside, so you
Yeah,
can.
let's assume nice weather.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
a big
assume it's
assumption to
nice.
make, but
Yeah, I mean, being positive. Let's assume it's nice weather. I would, really say I'm a big food person and just kind of go on like a little bit of like a food tour and do
mhm,
really experience, because Chicago is a food city. Some cities are nightlife, and Chicago is definitely, if you want to succeed in like the food and beverage industry, you need to have good food. So
yeah,
kind of go to like that Randolph. Probably it could be easy. You could go to Randolph Street and just kind of walk up and down and kind of do like a drink and an appetizer or small bites at a bunch of different places. There's some cute shopping there too, to just even like pop in and see that. I think also on like if you take Madison down, like there's like obviously there's that area of West Loop, but then kind of going jogging over a little bit more. Not forgetting about over there are some super cute shops, and just kind of seeing even within the neighborhood the differences within it. I think that's what's really cool, and walking and just eating.
yeah. There's a lot of good eating to be had in this in this city, man. It's
Yeah,
out of this
and
world.
just yeah, and even I mean, even trying different cuisines and different things, and being able to do that within the same neighborhood is amazing. And
Definitely.
definitely checking out a rooftop bar,
Hmm.
because those are our favorite in the summer.
Hmm. What's something that you would truly only know if you actually lived in the area that you live in?
That this neighborhood is called the Near West Side. That's literally it. One of them. I don't know that street parking is not as bad as you would think because
Okay.
it's really not. I don't. Random fun facts, I guess.
Yeah, that checks out. I've had that experience there too. Unless it's like a game day kind of situation. There's like an event going on nearby or something maybe, but besides that.
No, I mean, but even when there is an event, like it would be more so like getting onto my street, but actually finding a parking spot is unless there's like street cleaning or whatever, because you need a sticker. It's like,
Mhm,
but it's not permitted. It's not permanent parking. It's just like I need like a near West Side sticker that like proves
mhm,
that I live in the neighborhood,
mhm.
but it's free. So
Okay.
that's a plus.
Yeah, right on. What would you say is the most surprising thing about your neighborhood that you've learned since living there?
I would say the most surprising thing is how like quiet it is, just with the like location of things, especially when things are happening, like over the summer or especially when the weather's nice. And it's kind of actually both with the games and stuff. It's not as like crazy as you might think with the location.
Hmm. How about a common misconception that you found people to have about either your neighborhood? We can answer both, your neighborhood and then just the city at large.
That I live in a dangerous area is like a
Hmm.
big one. I feel like remember when my parents are like, it's really changed. Like, when they tell people where I live.
Hmm.
There's that. And I think we touched on it earlier. The misconception is that this is just a phase in my life and that I'm gonna move to the suburbs and live life there. Um, which I don't know, maybe, but I really, really
Hmm.
don't foresee that coming.
Hmm. Yeah, no white picket fence life, not for a while at least.
No. And I feel like the
Yeah.
people that do make that jump, like whether they, at one point said that they were going to be in the city forever, I feel like I always knew that that wasn't really their vibe. Like they
Mm,
might be in that realm, but there's just a certain type of person that is going to stay here forever. And I think that's, well, not in Chicago, but in the city, in a city.
hmm. Right. Yeah, I mean, bottom line, like kids get involved and kids change a lot of stuff, and that's not an experience that I have yet, but I definitely can empathize with it. Like I know how hard it is to like get your kid in the right school in Chicago and like that whole thing, but yeah, I definitely see where you're going with that for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, there's so many families that live in Chicago.
Definitely.
So,
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, but at the same time, it's so rare to actually like meet somebody who's truly from like born and raised their whole life in Chicago. It's almost like it's almost always like somebody like yourself, like so if they're from the suburbs and live here now or something like that. Like it's very few
yeah.
and far between that you find somebody like that.
I would say it depends on like the neighborhood and also,
Hmm.
like
It
with
does.
coaching gymnastic, I coach like a lot of people from like Lincoln Park, I would say like they're like born and raised and like stay here and like they have families and but I coach gymnastics kind of in like South Loop um area ish and like a lot of the parents of the kids like were born and raised in the city and then they have like teenagers now, so it just depends, but then I do like an adult class at the same time and pretty much everybody in that adult class is not from Chicago, so
Hmm. Let's so we were talking about restaurants, bars, things like that. Let's just do a quick like top five in no particular order. Really
oh
putting
my
you on the spot.
gosh, yeah, I I don't know. See, like I like to go to like a bunch of different places. I really don't like to go to the same place over and over again. I know that's a
Yeah,
weird
me neither. I know what you're saying.
thing to say. Yeah, so I feel like that's why it's like hard to pick because I feel like it depends on who I'm with and then I'm like I try to go to new places. I can't answer. Top
Mhm.
5. I mean, it really depends on the vibe. What are your top 5s?
Oh, turning it around on me. I wasn't ready for
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so the place I would answer in terms of the places where if somebody's coming into town, like if I have like family or friends coming into town, like what are the first places that come to mind that like we need to take you
Mm,
here? Because I doubt you've experienced anything quite like this wherever you're from. Um, so to that, I would say I'm avoiding like the deep dish pizza and like that kind of thing.
mhm.
I'm over it with the deep dish pizza. I don't know that I was ever really a big fan of it to begin with, but like I would take somebody to like
Okay.
Parlor Pizza or one of those other kind of pizza places like that. Something like Kuma's. There's so many really good burger places. Kuma's is in
Mhm.
there. Really a big fan of like Butcher and the Burger on Armitage and
Mhm.
Sheffield area. That one's really good. Let me think. Oh, Smoke. If somebody is looking for like the best barbecue, they'll you'd have to go to Texas or someplace to find barbecue that's anywhere near as good. Um, Smoke with a Q. They just opened a new steakhouse too. It's pretty good. And then right across from that steakhouse is another one, Honey Butter Fried Chicken.
Heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
taking
guess
a few
if
people
I had to
there.
think about that, it would be like places my dad like has brought me just because of him being like Rico Beano's is like very iconic and like very like puts you in a food coma and that's something that I would
Hmm.
definitely bring someone to for the breaded steak sandwich. It's
Hmm.
monster. So if you've not gone, you definitely need to go.
Where is
It's
it? What
amazing.
is it again? Say that again.
Rico Beano's.
Okay.
It's in it's like south. I want to say it's in the South Loop. They're famous for their breaded steak sandwich.
Mm,
And you have to I always we always get the king. You can't finish it all, but you eat half of it.
hmm.
It's just so amazing. It's just
Okay.
so yeah. That's or like like Manny's Deli. Just I feel like the iconic places that my dad has gone to for a million years and I'm like I'm a sucker for just like classic things like that's why I like to go out to different places but like there's a sandwich shop on Western that I grew up going to. It's like literally a hole in the wall, only open for breakfast and lunch. And I love to get like an egg sandwich from there. I've gotten the same egg sandwich since I was like 13. And I love that it's
Yeah.
down the street from me. And they have amazing grits. And they're just like, it's, I guess, like a memory that I mean, it's not like I'm gonna like bring someone up, but like I'm like, hey, you want to get like a great breakfast sandwich, like let's just go here and just pick it up.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a good note. I'll have to check those places out. I'll find some links and have those in the show notes for people to go and check them out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess just bottom line, like in summary, why should somebody want to move or live in Chicago? And from there, why would somebody want to live in your neighborhood?
Um, why would someone I think someone should want to move to Chicago if you're a number one, if you're a big foodie, because we love food here. And it is the Midwest. People are nice, but I would say from living in like a different Midwest area, they're nice, but they're not passive aggressive, which I, a lot of Midwesterners can be passive aggressive, but I feel like Minnesota people can be very passive aggressive. So I like
Hmm.
that. Um,
Shots fired.
and I didn't learn what passive aggressive was until I lived in Minnesota. So,
Okay.
um, and then I would say moving to my area, well, to be selfish, I really don't want people to because I want to like keep my rent and like keep it a little
Hmm.
secret. But if you are looking for something that is really great, like centrally located and kind of be a part of the up and coming, I would say that this is definitely the neighborhood for it. Just growing off the expansion of the West Loop is just going to continue to flow over to this area.
Yep. Agreed. Awesome. Well, I think that's about all I have on my end. Are there any other tidbits you wanted to say, or things you wanted to highlight, or questions I should have asked?
No, I think you hit everything.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience of the near West Side and Chicago in general with the audience. I'm sure everyone will get a lot out of it. All right. Thanks, Kristen.
Yeah, no problem.